Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy.
Thank you so much for waiting. We were having some technical difficulties, but hopefully it'll work today.
Well, we got an extra computer here to help us out. But
Yes.
to the news of the day, Bill Gates is trying to block out the sun.
Yes, so one more space intrusion, let's just call it that way.
Well, there's a bunch of space stories with Katy Perry as well.
Yes, which is what I will be talking about in Spanish as well.
What, you want to get into the 15 minutes?
Sure, we'll see how it's going to work today.
Okay. The technical difficulties we had may happen in the Spanish section, so
Yes.
we're going to try some new things today.
Yeah. Porque así es, ahora estamos, como lo he mencionado, tratando de grabar los segmentos en español. Espero que haya funcionado. Déjenme ver qué me dicen por acá, porque vi que habían comentarios, entonces antes de empezar los leo primero. Maue dice con calma, gracias, mientras se prepara la cena, entonces provecho. Walker dice, ¿se va a hacer o no se va a hacer la carnita asada? Es broma, buenas noches. Buenas noches. Y pues algún día, tal vez sí, quién sabe. Y Maue nada más mandó como una carita, entonces muchas gracias por su paciencia y esperemos que esto funcione. No sé si va a funcionar, pero va a ser un otro siguiente test. ¿Ven? Les digo. Perdón, así vamos a andar toda la noche, pero pues espero que sea divertido para ustedes vernos fallar y tratar de hacer que todo esto funcione. Así son los gajes del oficio. Pero ahora sí, vámonos con la historia en español, porque ahora sí parece que a Katy Perry le está yendo de mal en peor y nada más cada cosa que hace le sale mal y ahora le salió algo más en nuestro país, en México. Entonces, hablemos sobre esta mujer que al parecer no se puede salir de andar en las noticias por todas partes. Y pues parece que a la Katy Perry ahora sí le está yendo aún peor porque no solo hizo su cirquecito de irse al espacio, que ni siquiera fue realmente ir al espacio, porque el vuelo que hizo con Blue Origin fue suborbital, o sea que ni siquiera realmente llegaron al espacio, nada más anduvieron por ahí cerca todas esas mujeres empoderadas, pero ahora dados todos los problemas y el enojo comunal que ha tenido y causado desde entonces y a todas las personas que ha decepcionado, parece que toda esta campaña de marketing, que fue el propósito real de su viajecito ridículo, todo para promocionar su nuevo tour a la Eras Tour de Taylor Swift, pues ni siquiera le terminó funcionando porque ahora ha tenido que cancelar fechas aquí mismo en México, en Guadalajara. Si por fortuna no tienes idea de lo que estoy hablando, la semana pasada, el 14 de abril, a Jeff Bezos se le ocurrió mandar a 6 feministas insufribles a ver si las podía dejar por allá arriba, pero lamentablemente después de 11 minutos de básicamente volverse el equipaje de un vuelo de prueba del proyecto espacial de Jeff Bezos, todo creado por hombres, cabe decir, aunque todo esto fue sobre la gran tripulación femenina que existía por ahí. Ay, espérenme. Can you go to the other one before that? Jeff Bezos, el dueño de Amazon y de los discos más famosos y con más dinero, aterrizaron de nuevo en el desierto en Texas. En la tripulación iba la prometida de Jeff Bezos, Lauren Sánchez, que déjenme la pongo por acá. Aquí les pongo la foto de las 5. Esto fue, de hecho, lo que hicieron. Espérenme, no puedo bajar. Realmente no llegaron al espacio, aquí queda claro en este diagrama. Y déjenme, las busco, ahí están, las 6 insufribles. Y Lauren Sánchez, que es, déjenme dónde la encuentro, la que está aquí en medio. Que yo creo que mandó para allá arriba a propósito, a ver si la podía dejar por allá, porque pues si no, ¿por qué no se han casado? Porque no es como que les falta el dinero. Junto a ella también iba la amiga, entre comillas, de hace años de Oprah Winfrey, Gayle King, como ya mencioné, también Katy Perry, que creo que ni ella sabía bien qué hacía metida y montada en esa lata de Pringles que parece otra cosa, y las otras 3 que complementaron la tripulación, 100% femenina, que pues me impresiona que ni siquiera saben lo que es una mujer hoy en día, pero así se hacen llamar. Fueron una científica aeronáutica, ex científica aeronáutica, que se llamaba Isabel, creo, una activista de derechos civiles, disque, llamada Amanda Nguyen, y una productora de cine Karen Flynn, y quién sabe qué hacían ahí metidas tampoco. Sí les llama la atención que en esta lista nunca mencioné a una astronauta como tal, que sí las hay, y que el enfoque debería estar en ellas, en especial una astronauta que regresó a la Tierra hace poco, después de andar varada por allá arriba como 9 meses, gracias todo al gobierno de Joe Biden, que ya no las pudieron bajar, en la Estación Espacial Internacional durante, 9 meses. Apenas regresó el mes pasado y se llama Sunny Williams, gracias a los esfuerzos de la competencia de Blue Origin, que es la de Jeff Bezos, SpaceX de Elon Musk, que pues realmente ni me viene ni me va Elon Musk, pero su compañía por lo menos sí tiene objetivos más concretos que la de Bezos, que pues solo quiere mandar a millonarios al espacio en vez de ir a hacer algo más productivo, como Elon Musk, que quiere colonizar Marte, que ahí sí no sé si estoy 100% de acuerdo tampoco, pero pues por lo menos están avanzando la tecnología espacial de forma significativa. Y también a todas esas no astronautas que acaban de regresar, se les olvida mencionar a todas aquellas astronautas que, pues, mujeres que sí orbitaron alrededor de la Tierra, como por ejemplo la astronauta rusa, primera y única mujer en tripular una nave por sí sola llamada Valentina Tereshkova, quien en 1963 orbitó la Tierra 48 veces durante la misión Vostok 6 y pues cuyo nombre ni ha sido mencionado en estos últimos días que andamos todos hablando de astronautas mujeres. Estas Barbies astronautas en servicio a las relaciones públicas de Jeff Bezos y pues de sí mismas también han tenido el descaro de llamarse a sí mismas astronautas cuando pues en realidad solamente andan haciendo un cosplay barato, o bueno, pues en este caso bastante caro, porque, bueno, extremadamente caro, porque los boletos andan en más o menos, nada más el depósito, $150 millones para, pues, figurar en algo de lo que no tienen ni idea. Y claro, también está toda la especulación de que tanto fue el nivel de cosplay que ni siquiera subieron ni bajaron, pero más bien todo fue grabado en un estudio, con algunos mostrando pruebas de lo limpia, por ejemplo, que regresó la cápsula, cuando normalmente ese tipo de cápsulas y viajes al espacio hacen que toda la indumentaria llegue toda quemada por la fricción con la capa de ozono cuando vuelven a entrar. Y también pues que la puerta, ya que habían aterrizado, se abrió misteriosamente antes de que el visco de Bezos pudiera abrirla como si las estuviera rescatando. Pero pues toda esa teoría conspirativa ya quedará para otro día, si es que algún día se comprueba algo de lo que se dice. Pero hasta el secretario de Transporte de Estados Unidos, St. Geoffrey, dijo que todas estas mujeres ridículas no se pueden llamar a sí mismas astronautas porque no alcanzan los criterios de la Federación de Aviación Aeronáutica para llamarse a sí mismas astronautas. Y desde que subieron y aterrizaron, hasta celebridades han salido a criticar y decir que todo este chistecito solo fue un gastadero de dinero y de recursos, y aparte generó muchísima contaminación que se podrían haber ahorrado, cosa que muchas de estas mismas mujeres que subieron con sus trajecitos ridículos antes decían que les preocupaba muchísimo. Una vez más, la hipocresía con patas, o bueno, en este caso con nave espacial, por así decirlo. Y pues sí, ahora la noticia más reciente es que ya sea la razón que se ha dado oficialmente aquí, como dice la promesa de Katy Perry por la cancelación de conciertos en Guadalajara, y hace poquito anunció que van a cancelar ahora sí las fechas que tenía planeadas y con las que planeaba más o menos iniciar su nuevo tour que fue a promocionar allá arriba al espacio. Pero ya sean ciertas las razones, y no estoy segura que sean ciertas, lo que sí estoy segura es de que muchos fans de todas maneras no hubieran ido, o que de todas maneras querían que les devolvieran los boletos desde que vieron toda ridiculez y a esta mujer increíblemente ridícula y falsa en su sube y baja espacial. Los conciertos que tenía Katy Perry programados para el próximo 2 y 3 de mayo en la Arena Guadalajara. Y por acá sí logro bajar. Ay, espérenme. Ahora sí fueron cancelados porque al parecer la arena no había sido, todavía no la terminaban de construir. no sé si yo estoy tonta o no entiendo bien cómo funcionan todos estos tours, pero ¿por qué pondrían fechas, en especial para iniciar el tour, en una arena que todavía no existía? También se canceló, por ejemplo, el concierto de Carlos Rivera, que iba a inaugurar la arena, pero pues la cancelación que más ha llamado la atención y de la que todos están hablando es la de Katy Perry, porque no solo es su cancelación, la cancelación a su persona física, pero ahora también a los conciertos, y sí le está yendo de mal en peor. Aunque al parecer esta mujer es lo que siempre quiere hacer, siempre quiere andar figurando y siempre quiere estar tan, ahora sí, en la boca de todos, ya sea positiva o negativamente, tanto que le están empezando a llamar la nueva Meghan Markle, y por lo menos espero que a los fans que sí habían comprado boletos les den en reembolso, pero en realidad creo que más bien muchos tapatíos se libraron en esta ocasión. Solo ahora sí asegúrense de que sí les den su reembolso por esta gran ridiculez y por una siguiente metida de pata de esta mujer, Katy Perry, que es insufrible. Y pues no queda mucho más que decir, más que a ver cómo le va en todos estos conciertos que tiene planeados en su gran tour de básicamente eras de Taylor Swift. Ahora todas se les está ocurriendo hacer este tipo de tours donde recorren toda su carrera. Y sabemos que en México a Katy Perry no le ha ido muy bien, ya sea lo que le pasó en Venga la Alegría o también hace muchísimo tiempo, no sé si alguien se acuerda de cuando en los MTV Awards aquí en México decidió echarse en contra un pastel y terminó rodando por todos lados porque el pastel estaba hecho de cartón y más bien la que acabó moreteada y lastimada fue ella y no tanto el pastel. Entonces, a ver si le pasa algo parecido, estaría muy chistoso, la verdad. Y muchos dicen, y si no se saben la historia, que tal vez algún día la contaré, Katy Perry ha tenido varios otros tropiezos. Por ejemplo, hay muchos dicen que ayudó a que una monja se petateara en Estados Unidos, todo porque estaba en litigio en contra de un convento de monjas porque se lo quería comprar como su casa y se volvió todo un desastre. También se anduvo peleando en las cortes ella y su esposo Orlando Bloom porque le querían comprar la casa a otro viejito veterano que también tenía varios problemas de salud y que solo empeoraron con la necedad de esta mujer. Entonces, a ver pues qué pasa con la Katy Perry aquí en México y en el resto del mundo y a ver si no la podemos volver a mandar y ahora sí dejarla por allá arriba, como decía la cuenta de X de Wendy's. Ok, estamos tratando de ver si memorizo cosas, a ver si sale mejor, pero claramente hoy tuvimos varios tropiezos y en parte esos fueron las dificultades técnicas de que no podíamos tener básicamente artículos en ambos, en mi computadora y además yo controlar todo. Entonces, pues ahí les dejo más o menos qué es lo que está pasando, pero ahora sí los leo. Maue dice, Perry pensó que le iba a salir tan bien como hacer lip sync, un astronauta que no lo es realmente, e igual una cantante que no lo es realmente. Y al principio Katy Perry sí pues tenía algo de talento, por lo menos, por si no sabían, ella es de familia muy cristiana, al punto de que su papá era un pastor que evangelizaba y se iban a evangelizar por todos lados, y toda la carrera musical de Katy Perry empezó ella cantando canciones de gospel y de evangelización y etcétera, y de ahí pues se volvió completamente rebelde, se fue en contra de sus papás y de la iglesia y pues empezó a decir que se besó con mujeres. Walker dice, hace tiempo, según sabía, la Perry tenía raíces cristianas en sus canciones exactamente, pero quizás desde su fama se cayó. Desde que su fama se cayó ha empezado con estas cosas. ¿Qué opinas tú, Nat? Sí, justamente era lo que decía. Tenía ramas cristianas, pero se le olvidaron hace mucho tiempo, la verdad. Y pues no creo que regrese tampoco. Hay algunos que dicen que anda tratando de figurar otra vez en círculos cristianos, a ver si alguien por allá le hace caso o si le va un poquito mejor que lo que le ha ido hasta ahorita, pero no creo. Y Walker también dice, a propósito, la frase ¿se va a hacer o no se va a hacer la carnita asada? Es una frase meme cuando se está esperando por alguna cosa. Gracias. Les digo que a veces, ahora sí, muchas veces siento que mi slang, pues, mexicano, está medio atrasado, está 13 años atrasado porque, pues, me fui hace 13 años y ahí sí, todavía hay cosas que me pasan por encima de la cabeza porque no me las sé. Tengo que seguir aprendiendo y meterme más a internet, yo creo. Ya hablaron del logo de Blue Origin cuando se pone de cabeza. Esa es otra de las teorías conspirativas, que sí, exactamente en el trajecito ese azul que traían puesto, parecía que cuando lo voltean, aparecía Cthulhu o alguna criatura, o el demonio, el diablo, algo así. Pero pues una vez más, ese va dentro del cajón de teorías conspirativas, de las cuales hay muchas, pero voy a esperar a ver si sale algo más. De algunas investigaciones que han estado haciendo algunos periodistas independientes sobre el vuelo de Blue Origin para hablar más a fondo sobre todas esas teorías de la conspiración. Pero ahora sí, ya nos tardamos suficiente, entonces vámonos con la sección en inglés con Guy. Muchas gracias a todos los que están acá. Gracias por aguantarnos todas las dificultades técnicas. A ver cómo sale el clip de esta cosa que intentamos hacer. Y ahora sí, vámonos con la versión en inglés, espérenme. Yeah.
I got it.
Thank you.
That was very good. So
I tried.
It went well.
Yeah, I tried to memorize what I'm going to say beforehand. So.
Yeah. So
but then we need more computers and stuff. So
yeah. Well, I think the same amount of computers. We just needed to update the software, and we didn't have time. It said it was going to take an hour. So
yeah, we figured out we needed to update the software basically when we were supposed to go on. So we tried but failed.
Yeah.
But here we are.
You want to get into the first story, which is the best story, I think.
Sure.
Okay, why don't we get into we'll go article, then we'll talk about it, and then we'll go into the video clip.
Sure. Let's see if it works. It's not working.
Oh, it's not working. Oh, yeah, hold on. Yeah.
No.
We can go to my iPad, I guess.
No. Hold on. Let me try again. It's because we have 9 different HDMI cords. I don't want to do that.
Oh, you have to unplug the other ones? Oh, I got to unplug the other ones. One moment.
But they're not plugged into mine.
Yeah, they are.
Okay. Hold on. Oh, now it works, I think. Yeah. Yay.
Okay.
Technology.
Technical difficulties. Tomorrow it should be running a lot more smooth.
Hopefully.
Okay, so let's get into
so yes,
this.
Apparently Bill Gates wants to block out the sun.
And this is
as I put in the title.
This is something I was talking to with a friend of mine the other day about.
And we actually talked about it on stream a while ago.
Yeah, but it wasn't with Bill Gates. What it was that we talked about the technology they had to block out the sun, that it had gotten approved. If you remember, and you've been watching us for a while, it was a technology
from an Israeli company, right?
Yeah, developed by Israel, but funded from a U.S. company. And now the U.K. is jumping in. They're going to approve this thing, it looks like, within the next couple of weeks to actually launch it. Why don't you read some about it? And then I have a clip that will actually explain it to the people more in depth.
Okay, so this Bill Gates funded, and again, this is coming from CNBC News, so take it with a grain of salt. And all of the sycophanting over Bill Gates is because they're very on the left and very biased. This Bill Gates funded chemical cloud could help stop global warming. We're starting.
First of all, I want to say something here. This could stop global warming. People are starting to wake up to this thing was one big economic fraud to try to manipulate the world economy. And they're realizing, yeah, there might be some global warming, but it's not as bad as they've been making out to be.
And especially the solutions they've been trying to implement. Example number one are not what's even best for the world.
A solution like this, they're going to have to implement now before people are like, no, you have to stop, which they should be doing. This is completely radical to me.
Yeah. And I'm surprised not a lot of people might know about this. So fires burning across the Amazon rainforest have renewed the debate about solutions to climate change. Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical approach called solar geoengineering. Just with that name, it tells you everything. It's meant to mimic the effects of a giant volcanic eruption. Thousands of planes would fly at high altitude, spraying millions of tons of particles around the planet to create a massive chemical cloud that would cool the surface, essentially bringing in an ice age. Modeling studies have found that it could reduce the intensity of heat waves. For instance, apparently it could reduce the rate of sea level rise. It could reduce the intensity of tropical storms, said Andy Parker, project director at Solar Radiation Management Governance Initiative.
Yeah, food management and things like this need the sun. And if anything goes wrong with this, global food supplies are going to be in major hurt, and governments will be able to step in an authoritarian model.
And also, I mean, just literally trying to play God, be it with IVF, be it with GMOs, be it with whatever. always ends up not working
I'm
out as people think they will.
I'm completely against this. This is something that absolutely pisses me off. This is going to affect everybody on the planet, and we've seen how the jibby jab went wrong. Imagine if this goes wrong.
Yeah. So the technology is not far from being ready, and it's affordable, but it could cause massive changes in regional weather patterns and eradicate blue sky. These consequences might be horrific. They might involve things like mass famine, mass flooding, drought of kinds that will affect very large populations, said Stephen Gardiner, author of The Ethical Tragedy of Climate Change. And
we had only recently in the last few hundred years come out of a global cooling period, and that's why the population was so low. The population was able to explode and grow because of the heat. So if they put us back in another ice age, this is going to be horrific. More people die of global cold every year than like global warming, and people don't know this.
And I mean, we also know how much Bill Gates wants to get rid of populations. That's basically what he's been trying to do almost since he funded Microsoft and got some money. That's why he started with a lot of the vaccination campaigns and stuff like that.
And I got old Billy Boy here. This is going to explain in depth how this is supposed to work. And there's just so many things in my head that can go wrong. Okay, hopefully I got the volume on the right level. We'll wait for you to get your headphones there.
Okay.
And here we go.
Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth. It's called solar geoengineering, and it's highly controversial.
How long will it be that countries keep experiencing these climate?
And this is going to be, we'll just leave it on full screen and see what happens.
Impacts before someone gets desperate and says, hey, we need to cool the planet with solar geoengineering.
It would look something like this. Thousands of planes would fly very high and use nozzles to inject millions of tons of light-reflecting particles into the stratosphere. It would create a thin chemical cloud of those particles around the whole planet, blocking some sunlight from reaching the surface. It would mimic a giant volcanic eruption, which we know cools the Earth.
I saw a clip somewhere.
Okay, and we can go back to us. And that was a pretty good explanation of how it's going to work. These people seem very pro this geoengineering, but I did find it a good video explaining how they want to block out the sun, how it's like a volcanic eruption. I have seen so many things in the past about if there's a certain number of nuclear explosion, the dust particles in the air would block out the sun. This would bring on a global ice age and possibly human extinction. They said similar things about volcanoes when they're warning about earthquakes activating volcanoes. And if enough volcanoes erupt at once, it will block out the sun, basically permitting growth of food and things like this. So people really need to start speaking up against stuff like this, but they're trying to keep it under wraps.
Yes, I mean, same thing that happened, for example, with Bill Gates's appeal thing, where it's this chemical that they put on plants and crops, etc., that essentially ends up creating chemical compounds within your body and is a huge hormone disruptor. And a lot of, speaking again about Katy Perry, for example, she bought this brand of apple cider vinegar called, I forgot.
Oh, I can't remember the name.
She bought a brand of apple cider vinegar, Bragg's, called Bragg's. Her and Orlando Bloom bought this apple cider vinegar, and then they started promoting that they were using Bill Gates's chemical Apeel, APEEL, which essentially is a huge hormone disruptor, and everybody that was all like the pro health nuts that actually use apple cider vinegar stopped using that brand because of the consequences of using this chemical. And again, Bill Gates is also the owner of a lot of farmland in the US, and not only in the US, where he wants to start applying all of these experimental GMOs, etc. Also, all the campaigns that he has done and how he's being sued and denied from entry from India, I believe.
Yeah, well, he's not allowed in India, and they want to prosecute him in India for his jibby jabs that he experimented on the entire population over there,
causing major side effects.
Hundreds of thousands of people died over there. It was crazy.
Passed away, and also contributed to birth defects, etc.
But I will talk about one more thing. I watch a lot of debates, as you guys know. I'm always talking about them, but I was watching a debate the other day about chemtrails. So it was two obvious progressive leftists that were saying chemtrails aren't a real thing, and two conservatives that were saying, yeah, chemtrails are a thing. It's a thing the government's kind of admitted to. And now here we go. This is like large-scale global chemtrailing the entire globe. So they're saying they're releasing one chemical. That chemical could have massive implications on the globe. What happens if they test different things out on different regions and release different chemicals? This isn't beyond the government, or the government could give out a contract to a Bill Gates style company. So then they have deniability and they're not liable. Bill Gates' company would be liable. Then the company just declares bankruptcy when something goes wrong.
Yes, and we've seen also like with the GB companies, it's quite easy whenever they want to get immunity, essentially. funny word.
Okay, so we're slowly implementing a new format. We have 3 major stories throughout the night we go into. This is one of them. After each major stories, if there are any comments, we're going to read the comments out for each major story.
Sure. So, did you know about, Mawa says, did you know about Savor, the synthetic butter Bill Gates is creating, having a base CO2 more healthy and with no animal cruelty? Once again, it's essentially just margarine. And he also was very big into the whole fake meats
Yeah,
thing.
a lot of things started going wrong with fake meats as well.
Yes, because of how many chemicals it takes to make something look and taste kind of like meat, and how actually bad it is for you. Once again, hormone disruption, the effects of those kinds of stuff in the body. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Just stick to what we've been doing for thousands of years. Eating meat
Yes.
and vegetables without chemicals. In this modern age, so many things are going wrong, and we need to reverse these things. Get the chemicals out of the food. Get the GMOs out of the food. Go back to things that are natural. I would like to see people, we're going to talk about this a little later, but this migration towards cities is not good for the population. But
Yes,
we'll talk a little
cities
bit.
negatively affect people's lifestyles and livelihoods way more than people are even aware of, like living in a city style.
And it gives the government
lifestyle.
mass control, because you don't
That's
have
it.
control over your housing. You can't grow your own food. You don't have access to your own water.
Yes.
So,
And not so much, I don't think, in Mexico, but it is like insane sometimes in these big cities in the States and in Canada, for example, that people don't even know where real food actually comes from.
Yeah.
Like if you ask anybody where does milk come from, a lot of people will say from the store instead of from a cow. And a lot of people also aren't willing to, for example, face to face the fact of what they're eating, or even respecting the meat that they get or that they're eating. And I do think it would be important for everybody to essentially go to see how animals are processed, butchered, etc.
Yeah.
If they eat animals. Not that I'm a vegan or vegetarian. I was for a while. That was a stupid idea. But I do think it's important people get more in connection with where the food comes, maybe even trying to grow some, I don't know, a tomato or something.
I have major back issues and things like that, and I have inflammation in my back, which really cripples me some days. So I've tried every diet. I've tried vegetarian diets, vegan diets, all meat diets.
Paleo, keto.
Yeah. So
I did keto with him.
vegan and vegetarian diets
Are some of the worst ones.
Yeah.
It's
But there's a
really-
lot of propaganda supporting them.
There is, but I mean, there's also a lot of people that after years, especially vegan, like vegetarian, it's like, okay, fine. If you eat some milk and some protein and some animal fats, you do a bit better. But like people that go full vegan or even raw vegan, which I think is now going out of style, which is good. But I mean, these people end up with huge health complications. And a lot of the propaganda, which is the main problem, I mean, do whatever you want to do with your body, eat however you want, but a lot of the propaganda stuff you see on Netflix, documentaries, etc., is financed by people like Bill Gates that want to lead the world due to climate change or whatever they want to say as an excuse towards a less healthy way of just being in general.
This is just
and
ways
eating.
to implement authoritarian controls. We have to protect. There's global warming, climate change, water, food, health science, things like this. This is just ways to strip people's freedoms and rights and implement a soft kind of authoritarianism they're hoping the people will accept. But people are starting to wake up.
And also a lot of these solutions, for example, solar panels, windmills that generate electricity, have been proven time and time again to be even more toxic and worse for the environment and the planet.
Yeah, but I will say one thing about him. I do like wind and I do like solar when it comes to an individual basis, on an individual using them on their home or property. But when they implement these things on a large scale, they very often go wrong and they don't produce as much energy as they're supposed to. On a small scale, the implications are very small. So it's just good to have as a backup source of energy and then be plugged into the grid as well. Mm-hmm. Is there any more questions or we'll move on?
No.
Okay.
A lot of people have left.
Okay. Let's move to the next article.
So, as I said in Spanish, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy discredits astronaut title for the brave and glam all-female Blue Origin crew. Duffy said the women, including Katy Perry and Gayle King, do not meet Federal Aviation Administration.
Did you mention when they're going to implement, the UK is going to approve that and implement it?
No.
Oh, so yeah.
Astronaut criteria.
We kind of glazed over it. I don't think we went into the article, but they're going to approve it within the next couple of weeks and then implement this geoengineering in the sky.
In the UK.
So this is, but the UK.
Which is funny because the UK is already covered in clouds.
Yeah, how do you keep it just in the UK? That's the thing.
Too.
This thing is going to spread.
When there's volcanic eruptions, anybody from Mexico or Mexico City knows that volcanic ash essentially goes everywhere. So how are they going to control this so it just stays in the UK, which is already very cloudy as it is?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in. This is no longer a theory because I've been talking about this for a couple of years, and now the UK is going to be the first country to actually implement it. Okay, let's move on now. Sorry to interrupt you.
Back to Katy Perry. So she's not an astronaut, neither is Gayle King or all the rest of these ridiculous women that were claiming in interviews that they were now astronauts and they were the first female-led crew in who knows how many years. It's not true.
Well, why don't we hear what the Transportation Secretary said? Because there were 6 points you need to actually be an astronaut. They didn't reach a lot of these points, so their Transportation Secretary is now saying these ladies can't claim to be astronauts. And Katy Perry specifically is getting a lot of blowback from this, and she canceled some of her concert dates.
Well, I spoke about it, but her concert cancellations were because the stadium was not completed yet. Okay. But why would they plan to start this major tour at an arena that hasn't even been fully built yet? Who knows? U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is the latest notable figure to weigh in on the Blue Origin Monday 14 spaceflight, which featured an all-female crew that included pop singer Katy Perry and Jeff Bezos' fiance, who I'm sure he wanted to leave up there. In an ex post shared on Thursday, April 17, Duffy described America's commercial space industry as an inspiring project which showcases American ingenuity and exceptionalism. However, the Transportation Secretary noted that recent Federal Aviation Administration guidelines under the Commercial Space Astronaut Wings program clearly state that crew members who travel into space must have demonstrated activities during flight that were essential to public safety or contributed to human spaceflight safety.
Yeah, and Katy Perry's becoming the face of this team.
Yeah.
Which is funny because nobody else really has enough public facial recognition. The one girl's a newscaster and she was catching some heat, but Katy Perry is just really the biggest public figure here. The rest of the girls are semi-famous, but Katy Perry's catching all the heat. So if this keeps going and turns into a bigger cancellation, it's going to be on Katy Perry.
And also because she used the whole thing as a PR move to promote her new tour, which nobody cares about. And she just looked ridiculous doing it. Nobody could even read the set list when she put it up on a ridiculous butterfly. And also she's done other silly, stupid things before. So I think it just falls on her because...
Yeah.
I would also go against Gayle King, but...
Yeah, but Gayle King's not that. She's part of the mainstream media. People don't really listen to her. She's lost relevance over the last few years. Luckily. So Katy Perry's the one that really still has some relevance.
But it's funny because she was pretty undercover for a few years there, and now she's kind of coming back into the scene.
Yeah.
In a very bad way.
Let's keep going here.
Sure.
I think we got NVIDIA next.
Yes, so we kind of spoke about this recently, but NVIDIA to manufacture American-made AI supercomputers in the U.S. for the first time. NVIDIA Blackwell chip production starts in Arizona. NVIDIA opens first U.S. factories.
Okay, so we originally talked about this, and you mentioned to me, like, we already covered this story. Well, this is a new wrinkle to the story. They're going to supposedly manufacture all of their AI chips within the U.S. So this is a big move. They had already announced multi-billion-dollar investments in the U.S. They were going to move part of their manufacturing there. Now all AI chips are going to be manufactured in the U.S. And this is just another wrinkle of how I see the U.S. really rejiggering their infrastructure to get ready for war or to be prepared for war if one kind of cracks off. So specifically, AI chips are some of the most sought after chips within chip manufacturing. So that's why the U.S. government probably wants to have them manufactured within the U.S. and not outside. So other chips aren't necessarily as important. So the first things they want to move to the U.S. are these ones, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean that would be the main priority and the main new race that every country is in right now.
Yeah, and this was just a new wrinkle, so I just want to quickly cover it. We can go on to the next story here.
Sure. I don't want to announce for Tomix unless they pay me. YouTube says it now hosts more than 20 billion videos, unveils new features and Easter eggs in 20th birthday celebration. Our videos being like 120 of those. Yeah,
YouTube's been making a lot of changes to their algorithms and things lately. So maybe this is also geared around their 20th birthday anniversary. But go to the headline so I can see again. So it was 20 billion videos. This is a lot of videos. They don't delete them. They keep them in storage. How much storage do they have? Eventually, will they start deleting videos?
Well, I think what they do is they keep compressing and compressing and compressing, which is also why quality sometimes isn't the best. But I mean, it is interesting what will happen with all of that, because people are always complaining about AI and ChatGPT and etc. generating all of this, pollution essentially because of how much energy is needed for the data centers, like what's going on with YouTube and stuff, video platforms.
But I will say this, they have 20 billion videos. It sounds like a lot. It sounds like it's hard to store, but now those videos are becoming very, very valuable to nobody else except for YouTube. They're going to be able to train AI models off of these videos. So they definitely have the largest AI training set for video content. At least that would be my guess.
Yeah, maybe one day you'll see AI versions of us.
And especially natural human AI content, like other video platforms that are extremely produced and things like this, like Netflix. It's not the same kind of content. You really can't mimic real human behavior, but YouTube does have enough data for those kind of data sets.
Yeah, and I mean, we have seen them trying this out recently, kind of, with the whole, they haven't released it to us yet, but this whole new thing where they can automatically translate voice into, like, from English to Spanish or Spanish to English. And how do you think they're training that? How do you think they got those models to work with using everybody's content, essentially?
Yeah. So that was all I had for that.
Okay.
So the next one is Apple, I guess?
Yes. So EU whacks, hold on, let me get this to work. EU whacks Apple and Meta with $800 million in antitrust fines. Meta calls its penalty a tariff.
Yeah, this isn't a tariff. This is just absolute. The reason I put it in there was because of censorship, and these American companies want to operate under freedom of speech. The EU wants to hit these companies with fine after fine after fine. This is a mass fine here, but they've been being hit all last year with small fines and penalties for different hate speech. Not
similar
censoring.
to what also Canada tried to do with news and Facebook and Google.
Well, they are doing it.
Essentially asking, it's so ridiculous, that what Canada did basically, essentially, was try to get Facebook or anywhere that would publish Canadian news, which is subsidized and funded by the government. All the big news sites in Canada are, to essentially, whenever any person would click on a link, be it on Facebook, Google, etc., to that news platform that is Canadian, they wanted to charge Facebook, YouTube, etc., each time somebody would click the link, which usually it happens the other way around. Platforms want to get paid for that advertisement by the company itself, not pay the company to put them on It's just
anyway.
ridiculous.
Yeah, the Canadian government backed down on a lot of their stuff, but some of it still does remain. But censorship in general in Canada is ridiculous. It's to the nth degree.
Yes. So quickly, just to go back to the story, the European Union has fined Apple and Meta a combined 700 million euros in the first enforcement of its landmark digital competition law. The penalties for breaching the Digital Markets Act come amid attacks on the EU by the Trump administration for what it sees as the bloc's unfair targeting of American companies. The European Commission, the EU's executive arm, said Wednesday that it has fined Apple and Facebook owner Meta 500 million and 200 million respectively. Joel Kaplan, Meta's chief global affairs officer, criticized the EU's decision, accusing it of attempting to handicap successful American businesses. This isn't just about a fine. The Commission forcing us to change our business model effectively imposes a multi-billion-dollar tariff on Meta while requiring us to offer an inferior service.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring Elon Musk into this one because this is a huge opportunity. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people had already heard about the Tesla phone. He had developed that to a pretty late stage of development, and it's linked with Starlink. So the plan was if they did block X, he was going to release the phone, and the phone would be direct to satellite, so the government would have no interference on trying to shut down X like they did in Brazil and in France and in other countries.
But now that he's like all buddy cozied up to the U.S. government, would that be a good idea?
I think it would be, because the U.S. government wouldn't mind having his phone within the U.S. and other countries are right now really putting these almost $1 trillion or $1 billion fine on a lot of these companies. So at a certain,
which I mean to them is like,
well, at a certain point, if it keeps up, and this is just one of many fines though, if this keeps up, it doesn't become financially relevant to keep service in those countries unless there's an X phone. And they provide service to that X phone. This would make the X phone highly coveted because it would provide free speech in non-free speech zones, like what the EU is becoming. Mm-hmm. So I would really like to see Tesla actually release that phone and make it direct to satellite. Apple has already added Starlink to their cell phones, so if you don't get signal where you're at, it will not just safety, it will automatically link to Starlink. Okay. And then you have access.
But do you have to pay extra? I think you have to pay
$10.
extra. Yeah.
It's not a lot, though.
No, but my phone's very old. So quickly, Rafa says, here reporting myself. Hello, Rafa. Thank you for being here. And he also says, do you remember the first videos you saw on YouTube?
Oh, I got to think about it. Do you remember?
I mean, when I was younger, of course, watch a lot of like makeup tutorials, like way back when YouTube was what it used to be, which was people like in their bedrooms testing out things or talking about just random things. I also like Mosh, for example. That's very, very old. That's gonna date me.
Yeah, I used to teach jiu-jitsu, so I used to watch a lot of jiu-jitsu instructional videos, things like this. I've always used YouTube as pretty much education.
Yeah, I haven't. I used to watch a lot of gossip and stuff as well, because I'm a girl. And also, there used to be the slow-mo guys. I basically only used to watch the slow-mo guys, which were these guys that had like these special cameras that can slow everything down like to like the second, like milliseconds.
Oh yeah.
So it was interesting. They would explode stuff and things, that and makeup tutorials essentially.
Well, and these days I watch a ton of politics
and makeup reviews,
and even more debates. Like I'm obsessed with debates. She hates them.
I mostly watch like when I don't want to think about anything, or when I'm editing and I need to concentrate, I just watch like random stuff. Also, people I disagree with, people I agree with, politics, news, etc.
Well, did anybody in the chat say what?
No. What are the first videos all you guys watched? Do you remember? Because I like the first things I remember were makeup tutorials and like Mosh and slow-mo guys.
But the first things I started watching video with was actually not YouTube. It was Netflix.
Smosh.
Because I was working at Blockbuster at the time, and Blockbuster was you could get CDs in the mail, rent 3, return 3, and they were trying to compete with Netflix. So I was very aware of Netflix at a very early stage. So that's the first place I really started watching online content. Yeah. But eventually I migrated over to YouTube because it has everything I need.
Yeah. But I remember like when we kind of first met, you used to watch YouTube. You used to use YouTube like as a music source as well.
Oh yeah, just to play in the background and things like that.
It's better than Spotify.
The next story is one of our major stories, so it's going to be Jordan Peterson. So if anybody does have any questions, comments, write them in. Once we get to the end of the article, we'll read them out.
Yeah, because now I want to know like what people used to watch at the beginning of YouTube, because it has changed a lot. It has become overly produced. Like there's now major shows that just happen on YouTube and that are completely financially independent, kind of like us, but we're still learning, as you could see earlier today. But it is interesting, the shift that has happened and what it has allowed a lot of people to create. But at the same time, we have creators like Mr. Beast, who I don't think should be at the level they're at.
There's so many different...
Because they're not bringing anything to the world except throwing money at people.
There's so many corners of YouTube now that, wow, anything you're into, there's something for you there.
Yeah, and I think that's what's missing from RUMBLE, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're very unfocused, and there's only one kind of content, essentially.
Free speech content.
Yeah.
That's what they're known for. That's what they developed.
But also,
but their business model was not good because they're just overpaying for top creators to come over, but they really need to fill out their educational content.
Yeah, and like just having like how to use a camera tutorials or even makeup tutorials, stuff like that. I think it would help RUMBLE to focus more on smaller creators that can bring other stuff to the platform that's not just debates, conspiracy theory, and politics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. But speaking of Rumble, free speech, etc., Daily Wire's Jordan Peterson links Christ is King calls to extremism on Hannity, slams internet anonymity. He has also been making the rounds. He was on Joe Rogan yesterday.
Yep, and I originally put this on there because of the internet and anonymity. I completely disagree with him on this. We'll get into it in a minute. But he has always had this bad take on this, and people are calling him out. Certain creators and platforms are becoming the new...
Let me just change it.
What would you call it? Institutions. So because he's qualified, educated, and things like this, they try to put them forth as the thought leaders, giving the people their opinions. Yeah. But people are kind of rejecting him and the Daily Wire as well. So it's interesting.
The Daily Wire has been in hot water for a while now.
But the first part of this, it completely blew past me, but the Christ is King thing, he's taking shots at Candace Owens.
Yes, and he has been for a while.
And the more I investigated this, it's like he's not on the right side of this one. And the reason he's going directly at Candace Owens is because of his daughter. His daughter stepped up to Candace Owens, had a full-on debate.
Michaela Peterson.
They had a formal debate on Piers Morgan, and man, she looked dumb as rocks. Not Candace Owens, but Michaela Peterson. Wow. And
a lot of it had to do with,
and she looked weird. Her face wouldn't move because she had so much Botox and her lips are weird.
Yeah. She's all natural and only eats meat, but injects her face who knows how many times a week. But the thing that was in the background of all of that whole discussion in the foreground is that Michaela had something to do with the Tate brothers, essentially, but they don't like it mentioned.
Andrew Tate ran through her.
The Petersons don't like that mentioned, and that's also, I think, has a lot to do with why Jordan Peterson is now against Candace, because Candace has kind of been outspoken about the Tate brothers and the allegations against them.
Candace Owens is the one person you don't want to mess with. If she came from my head, it's like I'm going to give her an apology and leave it at that.
Yeah. And not fight with her. But yes, now he's been
and I do have a clip of this in a little bit. I actually have two clips, but let's go through the article like you were saying.
That's not an article. It was just...
there
is no article.
Oh, okay. I have a couple clips of this then.
Okay.
The first one was the first clip I found, but the second one is from Joe Rogan.
Okay. Do I go to you?
So I'll pause these quite a bit just because they're from Fox News and Joe Rogan, and both tend to hit people with copyright.
Well, I think the most important thing to do first is to draw a distinction between the political and the psychological and not to collapse them together. So imagine this. Imagine that there's a group of individuals, about 4% of the population, who have a set of personality characteristics that have been described as dark tetrad. So they're Machiavellian.
And you're going to see him repeat a lot of these same theories he has on the Joe Rogan in a minute. That's why
he does that a lot.
I have 2 clips where he's saying almost the identical thing, and he's really going into this woke right space that James Lindsay's trying to propagate. James Lindsay has lost all relevance when he turned against conservatism and things like that. But both Jordan...
Against a certain type.
Yeah, but both Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay were like closeted liberals. So
well, there's also this huge infighting happening right now on the right.
Yeah.
They use their language to manipulate. They're narcissistic. They want unearned social status and reputation. They're psychopathic, which makes them free of empathy and parasitical and predatory. And they're sadistic. So they take positive delight in the unnecessary suffering of others. Now, those people also use false cries of victimization, let's say, to manipulate, and they're entitled. They seek vengeance when it's unwarranted, and they protest loudly and make very...
And let's just get this right here. He's talking about Candace Owens here, and it becomes more evident in the Joe Rogan episode if you watch that full episode. And that's why he brings Christ as King, and he's really questioning her actual religious foundation. And this is one thing I would not question her on, because she's definitely going to come after him.
But she did also recently convert, essentially.
Yeah, but you're not going to, you shouldn't, like even Andrew Tate, I think he became Muslim to get protection from Muslims and they get that social justice shield or that shield they're going to put up for him, which they did. And I don't even know if he's a real Muslim.
I also think his ideology aligns a bit more with the Muslims.
Okay, let's
public
continue.
cries for reparations that would be self-serving. Okay, now the way those people operate is they look for what patterns of belief form groups that they can infiltrate and then capitalize on. And that happens on the right. We did a report, the same group, on the use of Christ as King as a manipulative strategy by bad actors, hypothetically on the right.
And this was completely disproven. People actually started looking into this because he said he was doing a research study, and the people that were using this term Christ as King were not radicalized, and the statistics were completely
the whole study
skewed.
was essentially funded and done by a group of mostly Jewish people that are again, because this whole thing started because of the stupid Palestine-Israel stuff and people taking sides. And I think as more wise people have said, and I mean, that is why I don't have an opinion on it, because I don't actually really care that much about that. I think they should both just solve the problem themselves and stop involving every single other country in the world. Once again, globalization, etc. But I think some of the smartest people have said, like, just stop the war or don't involve other countries in your dispute.
Let's talk about this a little bit. There's a division within the conservative community, especially the populist conservative community within the United States right now. There's the Christian Zionist and the Christian non-Zionist. The non-Zionist wants to nationalize and no longer fund Israel, while the other half are all for Israel. Mm-hmm. So it's split almost down the middle, even with content creators like Jordan Peterson, the Daily Wire's on one side, Candace Owens, and a bunch of other content creators on the other side. Mm. What's the other gentleman's name? Ian
Carroll?
Yeah, Ian Carroll. So, but it really seems that, and Dave Smith. But the non-Zionists are really winning the debate when they do link up and they get them in a debate right now.
But it's also okay, and this goes out to content creators and people in general, to not have an opinion on every single thing. You can say, I have no opinion. You can say, I hope both sides disappear, essentially. And that's my position. Like, I hope both sides just end each other.
Well, and then rather than getting in a direct debate with Candace Owens or this thing, he's going through research projects and things like this and trying to bring it up like he's an authority on the matter and stuff like this. And this goes back to probably his college days.
But I also, for example, think Candace gets a little bit too much into it when she could just, take a few steps back.
Yeah,
and not get so invested in it.
I like that she's all the way in, and so is Dave.
But I mean, she's all the way in for Palestine.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm fine to disagree with a lot of content creators as well.
No, I'm fine too. But again, it's okay if content
Because
creators
even though I like Candace Owens, I also
don't
like
even have an opinion about everything. It's fine.
I also like Jordan Peterson, even though it sounds like I'm talking nothing but shit on him, because in this particular situation, I don't agree with him on. But in a lot of other situations, I do. And
again, like, they can just stay in their lanes. Jordan Peterson keeps talking to men, telling them to tidy up their rooms, tidy up their lives, make better men out of them, and then just shut up about everything else.
Well, Jordan Peterson, when he goes outside of his lane, he kind of gets lost, and he does have a lot of bad takes. This is why I've kind of withdrawn from really taking his word as gospel. So,
which he would like.
Let's go into the secondary clip here, though.
Sure.
And I may fast forward this one a little bit just so we can get into his second argument, which wasn't the Christ is King argument.
You also set that conversation up, but it poked up and made itself manifest in that conversation. And the issue is, how do you identify the psychopathic pretender? You know, you've let your curiosity guide you, your curiosity and your desire for knowledge, this quest, you've let that guide you as a podcaster. And by the way, I'm trying to work through exactly the same sort of thing.
And this goes into the Douglas Murray thing. Who's an authoritarian to speak? Who's an authority to speak on certain subject matters? Who's not? The debate between Dave Smith and Douglas Murray really brought this to the forefront. And again, the conservative community is divided on it. And I really like the fact that there is this dialogue going on within the conservative community. It means there's not top-down control right now.
How do you know, given your radical increase in stature over the last 10 years, how do you know when your curiosity and even your skepticism about the fact that things aren't the way that people say they are, because that's certainly been demonstrated in the last 10 years, how should anyone decide what guardrails to put up? Like, what do you look for? Do you have a conceptual system worked out for that? Like,
and yeah, this has been talked about a lot recently. A lot of pro-Zionist people have are calling out Joe Rogan for only having one side of a debate. So that's his opinion. I think Joe Rogan's brought guests on from both sides, and that's just what I think.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the time, whenever someone doesn't appear or one side doesn't appear on Joe Rogan, it's because they purposefully don't want to go to that show.
But I want to get more into the second part. I kind of forwarded through some of it because these two channels do copyright strike a lot. But one of the things he is bringing up is he wants to end internet anonymity. And he's been talking about this for about 5 years now. For the first time he was attacked online, that's when he said, there needs to be a way to ID everybody online. And then he went into this pro-digital ID for online content. Yes. And a lot of and if you just have one side of this debate, a lot of people may be fooled. But the truth of the matter is you can't have people speaking openly and honestly unless you can be anonymous online, because we've seen what happened in Canada and a lot of other countries. People with certain opinions were losing their jobs. They were getting canceled. They were losing access to social media itself.
Their bank accounts.
They lost their bank accounts in Canada. So, and there was one other thing I wanted to bring up in this, and we live in Mexico now, and I think if people want to have real political change here, online anonymity is going to be absolutely crucial. I know when we went to CPAC, a lot of people were scared to come on a podcast or speak openly in public because there is physical repercussions, or can be, in Mexico. Yeah. But if they can go online and remain anonymous and maybe even change their voice but have the debate, at least that starts the discussion in Mexico. Because right now there's a lot of third rails that people just won't touch publicly in Mexico. So from that perspective, anonymity is absolutely crucial, in my opinion. But what do you think about it?
Well, I think yes, and a lot of the ways in which they want to excuse trying to overreach control and overstep boundaries, governments, I mean, is through, we're going to keep you safe. It's for security. It's to make sure that you're who you are. But then we see what happens in the UK, where police just show up at your front door because you said X, Y, or Z that goes against the narrative, And which is why, like, a lot of people right now in the UK are essentially getting to their limit. And, for example, saying, I'm not going to fight for a country that doesn't let me speak freely about things that are obviously happening in my country.
Yeah, and
like immigration.
They've already implemented hate laws and compelled speech laws and things like this. So in the countries where they don't have real free speech, which is almost every single other country other than the United States, a lot of other countries think they have free speech, but when you start looking into their constitution, they don't really have free speech. Yes. So, but the countries where they already have hate laws and compelled speech laws, it's going to be very easy for them to implement not only a digital ID, but once they implement that digital ID, to make it mandatory if you want to log in online. This is also why Elon Musk's X phone, I think, is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and then also conduct mass surveillance and make sure that people aren't saying things that they shouldn't say. But the beauty and the importance of free speech is that everybody's openly out saying their opinions, and then if they're really bad takes or really bad opinions, what happens is through discussion, through investigation, through, just dialogue in general, the better opinions come to the top and we start losing the bad ones. What can happen a lot in countries or places where there is no free speech or where people are afraid to speak up is they go essentially underground, and then you cannot really see what people actually say, mean, etc.
And yeah, this is going to kind of dovetail into a few other talking points. So why don't we see if there's any other questions?
Sure.
Just maybe Jordan Peterson.
Rafa says, Christ is king. And Rafa also says, did you see that Israel deleted their condolences to the Pope?
Oh, no, but
I didn't see.
But I do have a good Pope video. I'm going to play it on RUMBLE, and I'm not sure if it's real, but if it is, it was shocking to me. Right before we came on here, I downloaded it and I put it into the computer, so I do have it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's at...
I'm sure I'm going to have to say take it with a grain of salt.
Well, they're currently displaying his body, and there were some pretty crazy things happening there. Okay.
Now what?
Oh, were there any other comments or no?
No, that was it.
Okay, I did want to talk a little...
Because we did start later, so I think people filtered out.
Fundamental rights in a lot of countries are now being turned into privileges, and I've noticed this language happening in the UK and a lot in the EU. They talk about citizens have privileges, not rights. And the government's the one that bestows these privileges on you. And they're changing words, much how the woke changed words before. What is a man? What is a woman? If they can successfully change rights into privileges, they're going to be able to strip privileges, which once were rights, at will. And people aren't going to have any rights anymore.
Which is, I a lot of countries were realizing people were a bit too free. So now they've tried to step it back because they see what the consequence is. No, I know. But I think they came to that realization about 20, 25 years ago, and then starting to try to implement ways to quietly take away the actual freedoms people had.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the rights that you're supposed to have in a lot of Western countries, but are now being turned into privileges and being stripped. We have freedom of speech is now being attacked with hate speech laws and compelled speech laws. That's how they're stripping speech, and especially free speech, out of a lot of these Western societies. Freedom of movement with in your own country and outside of your country is now being limited. So we seen during the jibby jab phase, especially in Australia, to move from one block to another, you very often had to show ID. To move from one city to another, you had to show ID. Curfews are being implemented. 15-minute cities are being implemented. A lot of these things are now being implemented.
And it's all in the name of safety and security.
Yeah. Okay, and then freedom of bodily autonomy is also under attack. We've seen, again, in the jibby jab phase what that means, but they're trying to expand that through we need to protect the broader population, so everybody has to get all these vaccines. If you want to go to school, you have to have all 70 vaccines. They have to be jibby jabs. They have to be up to date. So, and then they're really trying to bring the CDC into schools and elementary schools to give...
In the U.S., for example.
In the U.S., to give direct medical care to children without their parents' consent. So they're trying to strip parental rights away. So all these rights are now being turned into privileges. They're being turned into privileges, not so they can give you more privileges, but so they can strip or suspend your privileges at will, which were once your rights.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had to say on that one.
Now what?
The next one was one of our major stories tonight. So it's about climate change, food, water, energy, and housing. Did you have any articles on this?
No.
Okay, so I did have a couple of videos though. So let me find them really quick.
Yep. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay, let's start with J.D. Vance. This might dovetail a little bit into our last conversation, but it's going to lead us into the next conversation.
Ready?
So, yeah, J.D. Vance, every time he gives a speech to an international audience, it is just phenomenal. And it's only a minute, so.
Contrast with too many in the West, where some in our leadership class seem stricken by self-doubt and even fear of the future. To them, humanity is always one bad decision away from catastrophe. The world will soon end, they tell us, because we're burning too much fuel, or making too many things, or having too many children. And so, rather than invest in the future, they too often retreat from it. Some of them pass laws that force their nations to use less power. They cancel nuclear and other energy generation facilities, even as their choices, the choices of these leaders, lead to more dependence on foreign adversaries. Meanwhile, their message to their friends, to countries like India, is to tell them that they're not allowed to grow. Well, President Trump rejects these failed ideas. He wants America to grow, he wants India to grow, and he wants to build the future with our partners all over.
I'm guessing he was in India.
Yeah, this was definitely an Indian speech. Let's go back to... Anyway, you can go to any ones you want. I have another clip, though, that's going to actually really go into the conversation of water in the World Economic Forum. We've been talking about Klaus Schwab the last few days and his financial scandals, and he's kind of been outed. That's why he quit. That's now confirmed. And he was funneling money to his family and other associates.
Of course, as they do.
Okay, let's go into... Here it is. And I just found this, go to my computer, I just found this jaw-dropping, especially when you put it in the context of other things the World Economic Forum was trying to do. And the first story we covered tonight was Bill Gates and the UK teaming up to block out the sun. And if they block out the sun, they're going to be able to control food. She's talking about how they want to control water now.
In our nation and globally. And did we solve that? Like, did we actually manage to vaccinate everyone in the world? No. So highlighting water as a global commons and what it means to work together and see it both out of that kind of global commons perspective, but also the self-interest perspective, because it does have that parallel. It's not only important, but it's also important because we haven't managed to solve those problems which had similar attributes. And water is something that people understand. You know, climate change is a bit abstract. Some people understand it really well. Some understand it a bit. Some just don't understand it. Water, every kid knows how important it is to have water. When you're playing football and you're thirsty, you need water. So there's also something about really getting citizen engagement around this and really, in some ways, experimenting with this notion of the common good. Can we actually deliver this time in ways that we have failed miserably other times? And hopefully...
Okay, and when we're talking about this, she's really talking about the propaganda arm of...
What does she mean by common good?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, and this is really propaganda. It didn't work with vaccines and other things. So when I was looking into this, they're really reformatting their propaganda arm, and they talked about this at the United Nations. A lot of the United Nations this year, they have their annual meeting where everybody kind of gets on stage and talks about things. I did some lives about it a long time ago, almost a year ago now. Yeah. But a lot of that was how to reformat their propaganda and personalize it because climate change was failing. That's what that was the conclusion they came to, and they needed to personalize their new form of propaganda so every citizen would understand. And water is the thing that they're going into because they feel like every person can understand water, and it's more easily to manipulate the mind. But there's plenty of water. This is the thing. And there's ocean water. If we need to purify it, we can. We just need to solve the energy problem in order to solve that problem. And nuclear power.
And they don't want to face how to actually fix the energy problem
But
first.
if they can control water and they can control food by limiting sunlight, well, that's two of the three things, because the next thing's housing. And we have seen housing prices around the world just skyrocket.
And also their plans to manage that as well.
Yeah, like the way she's talking about this, it's typical World Economic Forum bullshit. But it's not bullshit, because they've actually tried to implement these plans. And they used the CDC as an arm. They used the UN as an arm. They're using all these different huge organizations to try to implement these global top-down plans.
Which is why a lot of people are against the whole globalism concept.
Yeah.
And like every country needs to do what every other country is doing, and everything has to be interconnected. So when one thing fails, everybody else fails as well.
Also, I want to know what's going to happen with water if they put this chemical in the atmosphere that's supposed to block out the sun.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to have direct access to clouds. What's going to happen to the rainwater that's in the clouds that we're drinking?
But also when it falls, because I'm guessing it falls, it's going to be volcanic ash eventually falls because it's heavy. And that actually does pollute like streams and water sources anyway. So what is this new chemical, and how will it impact water sources in the UK? Yeah,
and one really good thing, I know we're having a little bit of debate last night about Trump. Well, is his economics good? Is it bad? I don't know, but he is taking on globalism within his own country. He's almost dismantled it at this point. There's a little bit of remnants left, but now he's going after Europe and the European global elites and that entire infrastructure, specifically the World Economic Forum, the UN, and other
USAID,
the EU as a total governing body, an unelected government body. He's going after them.
Yeah.
So,
Rafa says I'm one of those who they weren't able to. Same here.
Yeah, me as well. So, but it was
and I got a fine for it.
It was very difficult in Canada because I had to get 4 jobs because at the time I had 2 jobs and they were threatening to fire me. And I said, well, I'm barely making my rent at the end of each month.
As it was.
So I better get 4. I was working 110 hours a week.
And then we both started I also got more jobs because we both just said at that point, we can't stay here.
Yeah, and that's when we started planning to leave. And that's why we're in Mexico now.
4.5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Also because I'm Mexican, but...
We were lucky we had somebody we could easily migrate to.
Yeah.
So, and...
Because a lot of people didn't, and they're still stuck there, and they hate it there.
Yeah, and Mexico tried to implement some of this stuff, but they weren't able to because people have to go to work in order to survive here. So they pretty much had to leave the country open unless they wanted a rebellion. And
also because, the infrastructure and everything in Mexico is harder to manage, and it's not well built. That's in certain ways, having a shitty government is an advantage because they're so disorganized and so much bureaucracy and so many things don't work as they should. It actually benefits the citizens sometimes when they can't, fully control and check everybody.
Well, I always say it's freedom through chaos because Canada is the absolute opposite. It's a technocracy.
It's very well organized.
Very well organized, and they're going to want to control every aspect of your life.
Yeah, they want to China-dize everything.
Okay, and I think that may have been the last story for YouTube. We only have a couple on Rumble today. Do we have any?
RUMBLE.
Jordan Peterson. Oh no, I had one crazy liberal clip, but maybe I'll save that for Rumble because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for YouTube, and it's a little loud.
Okay, but thank you so much for all your patience. Not what do you miss about Canada? Asks Walker. Nothing. There's certain there's certain days where I'll miss my car because I used to have a car there. Random things like that, or I miss these donuts, or I miss seeing the ocean because we were close to it, but we also never really saw it. But in general, nothing.
But I was
nothing specifically.
I was going through my phone the other day to look for I use my phone now to get clips onto my iPad. And I was going through a lot of old videos that I had because I did videography a little bit, so I'd shoot the city, and I had a lot of clips in a row, and I was like, wow, it was beautiful. Yeah. Vancouver is a beautiful city.
Again, it looks very nice.
And maybe I'll share those tomorrow. I'll get some clips just so people can get an idea of what Vancouver looks like.
Yeah, from the outside, it's beautiful, the trees, the water, the buildings. But when you live there, number one, it's essentially a concrete jungle.
It's completely mismanaged by the government.
And at the same time, I mean, the homelessness crisis is just insane. So I keep telling people and they don't believe me, but I feel a lot safer, I mean, in context, here in Mexico than I ever did in Canada, because when I had to walk to my jobs or when I had to be alone, there would always be someone yelling on the street, like in a drug-fueled rage, and you never know what they might do or not do to you. I've been spat at. I've been, pushed around as well. So, like, it's not the safest of all. And we also, I don't think you put it in a clip, but, there was just this woman that was in Vancouver that was talking about an experience she had where she got
mugged 4 times in one day.
Yes, by crazy people. And, that's the thing. It's this topic.
It was a 9-minute clip. So again, yesterday I didn't bring a clip in because it was really long, and today I didn't. But both those were good stories. And before we go here,
we could retweet it through our X.
Okay, before we go
Re-exit.
on YouTube, I was going to say something. Now I'm starting to forget.
Sorry.
Oh, that's
Canada.
okay. No, it was about. Okay, well, it's just.
And yes, I miss some donuts. I don't know. We lived close to supermarkets, etc. So that was convenient. Having a car was convenient. But in the end, you work 24/7 essentially just to be able to pay your rent. So we didn't go out or do many things because we had no time. We would work on weekends, both of us, 12-hour shifts or longer.
And again, before we leave YouTube, I just want to remind everybody, and I should have done it at the beginning, we're going to be starting at 8:45 next week, and we're going to be ending at 10:15. So 8:45 to 9:45 on YouTube, and the last 30 minutes on RUMBLE, where we're headed now. Also, we may not have edited videos for a couple weeks. We're really trying to hone in on these clips and perfect them. Once we have them perfected, then we'll start doing longer documentary style edits, I think.
Yeah, and fine tuning what we put on YouTube, kinds of clips, how we do the lives, so it becomes more of like a show and something stable and reliable.
And we're trying to populate our Nat and the Guy English channel here in the next couple weeks, I guess. Mm-hmm. We don't have any real content on there yet, just some old political speeches.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, we might have angered some people because we lost 2 likes. So.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry we angered someone, but don't really care. So yes, thank you, YouTube. We'll see you over at RUMBLE. If you haven't liked the stream and haven't subscribed, etc., please do like it. But yeah, we'll see you over there in a few seconds. Thank you.
Okay, and maybe we'll start with the liberal clip once people get over there.